The clicking of my heels against marble echoed through the Lucchese estate like a countdown timer. Each step toward the library where my future husband waited felt deliberate, calculated, exactly as I'd been trained. Shoulders back, chin high, expression serene. The perfect Mafia wife, arriving for inspection. Except Massimo Lucchese had no idea what he was actually getting. I paused outside the heavy oak doors, smoothing down my pale pink dress, the one that screamed harmless and decorative. The fabric was soft, feminine, chosen specifically because it was the opposite of everything I actually was. My dark hair fell in carefully styled waves over my shoulders, makeup flawless but subtle. I looked like a painting titled Obedient Italian Bride. The irony almost made me smile. Miss Bianchi, Marco, Massimo's right hand, opened the door with a nod that was more assessment than greeting. He'd been watching me since I arrived 3 hours ago, probably reporting every breath I took back to his boss. "Thank you, Marco," I said softly, adding just a hint of nervousness to my voice. Let them think I was intimidated. Let them think I was exactly what they expected. The library was everything I'd imagined a Mafia capo's personal space would be. Dark wood paneling, leather-bound books that probably cost more than most people's homes, and a massive desk that seemed designed to make visitors feel small. Behind it sat Massimo Lucchese, and I had to suppress my actual reaction. The photographs hadn't done him justice. Or maybe they'd been too kind. At 34, he was all sharp angles and controlled power, his dark hair styled back from a face that could have been carved from Carrara marble. Strong jaw, straight nose, and eyes so dark they were almost black. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe, though of course he'd paid for that wardrobe too. Everything about him screamed danger and control, the kind of man who'd never heard the word no in his life. Perfect. Serena. He didn't stand. Didn't even look up from whatever document he was reading. Just said my name like it was an item on his to-do list. Sit. I sat, crossing my ankles demurely, hands folded in my lap. The picture of compliance. He finally looked up, and I watched something flicker across his face. Surprise, maybe. Disappointment. Hard to tell with a man whose emotions seemed to exist behind bulletproof glass. "You look different from the photos," he said bluntly. No pretense of politeness or small talk. "I was 16 in those photos," I replied gently. "People change in 6 years." What I didn't say, I'd changed deliberately. The awkward teenager with the wrong haircut and unflattering clothes had been a carefully constructed image. Insurance against an early marriage my father might have forced. Now that the marriage was happening anyway, I'd allowed the butterfly to emerge. Timing was everything. Massimo's eyes traveled over me with the clinical assessment of someone evaluating property. "You understand why we're doing this?" "Family alliance," I recited dutifully. "Your father and mine arranged it before they died. The Bianchi and Lucchese families united strengthens both our positions." "And you're comfortable with that?" His tone suggested he didn't particularly care about my comfort, just wanted to establish the parameters. "Comfortable?" I tilted my head, letting confusion color my voice. "I'm not sure that's the right word, but I understand duty, Mr. Lucchese. I was raised for this." Something almost like approval crossed his face. "Call me Massimo. We're to be married in 2 weeks." 2 weeks? The surprise in my voice was genuine. I'd expected at least a month. "Problem?" "No, of course not." I smoothed my skirt, a nervous gesture that was only half performed. "I just thought there might be more time to prepare. The wedding, the arrangements. Already handled. My staff will manage everything. You just need to show up and say I do." He leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. "Let me be clear about expectations, Serena. I don't need a wife in the traditional sense. I need someone presentable for family functions, Someone to manage the household staff. Someone who understands discretion. What I don't need is drama, questions about my business, or interference in my work. Of course. I nodded, wide-eyed and earnest. I wouldn't dream of interfering. Good. He stood, signaling the meeting was over. Rosa will show you to your rooms. You'll move in 3 days before the wedding. Any questions? I rose gracefully, smoothing my dress again. Just one. Do you take your coffee black or with cream? He blinked, clearly not expecting such a domestic question. Black. Why? Because I like to know how to serve my husband properly, I said sweetly, the words dripping with exactly the kind of submissive domesticity he clearly expected. I saw it then, the flash of something in his eyes. Satisfaction, maybe. Or relief. He'd been worried about getting a difficult wife, and here I was, apparently concerned with coffee preferences and household management. Black, he repeated. 2 sugars in the afternoon, none in the morning. Perfect. I'll remember that. I gave a small curtsy, another deliberately old-fashioned gesture. Thank you for meeting with me, Massimo. He nodded dismissively, already turning back to his papers. Marco appeared at my elbow to escort me out. The moment the library doors closed behind me, I allowed myself a small smile. Round 1 to me. Your rooms are this way, Miss Bianchi, Marco said, his voice carefully neutral. I followed him through the sprawling estate, noting every detail. Security cameras in the corners, reinforced doors, the slight bulge under Marco's jacket that meant he was armed. The place was a fortress disguised as a luxury home. Here we are. Marco opened a door to reveal a suite that was larger than my entire apartment back home. Pale blue walls, antique furniture, windows that overlooked manicured gardens, beautiful and utterly impersonal. It's lovely, I said, injecting warmth into my voice. Thank you, Marco. He lingered in the doorway. Miss Bianchi, if I may speak freely? Of course. Mr. Lucchese is a good man. Demanding but fair. If you follow the rules, respect his privacy, you'll find this arrangement quite comfortable. Translation. Stay in your lane, don't ask questions, and you'll live a nice life in a golden cage. I appreciate the advice, I said sincerely. I have no intention of making trouble. After he left, I explored my new prison, running my fingers along expensive fabrics and examining artwork that probably cost more than most people made in a year. In the walk-in closet, I found it already stocked with clothes in my exact size. Someone had done their homework. I selected a simple white blouse and dark slacks, changing out of the pink dress. Better to save the ingenue act for when Massimo was actually watching. A knock at the door interrupted my exploration. Come in. A woman in her 50s entered, her gray hair pulled back in a severe bun, her expression professional, but not unkind. Miss Bianchi, I'm Rosa, the head of household staff. Mr. Lucchese asked me to brief you on the estate's routines. Of course, please sit. I gestured to the sitting area. Rosa's eyebrows rose slightly, probably unused to such familiarity from the family. She sat, pulling out a tablet. The estate runs on a strict schedule. Breakfast is served at 7, lunch at 1, dinner at 8. Mr. Lucchese prefers his meals in his private dining room unless he's entertaining. You'll have your own dining room, or you may eat with him if he requests your presence. I see. And what about the household staff? How many people work here? 15 full-time employees. Kitchen staff, cleaning crew, security, groundskeepers. They all report to me, and I report to Mr. Lucchese. And now to me as well? I asked gently. Rosa paused. Mr. Lucchese didn't mention that you would be involved in household management. Oh, I'm sure he didn't think to specify. But I'll be living here, and I'd like to understand how things work. Not to interfere, I added quickly, seeing her expression. just to know who to ask if I need something. Of course, Miss Bianchi. We spent the next hour going over schedules, procedures, and the intricate choreography of running an estate this size. Rosa was professional, thorough, and I could tell she was evaluating me, trying to figure out what kind of mistress I'd be. Let her wonder. When she finally left, I returned to the window, looking out over the grounds. Somewhere in this fortress, Massimo Lucchese was probably already forgetting about me, comfortable in his assumption that I'd be a perfect, forgettable wife. He had no idea. My phone buzzed with a text from my cousin Julia. How did it go? Is he as terrifying as they say? I smiled, typing back. He's exactly as expected. This is going to be fun. Because Massimo Lucchese thought he was getting a docile wife who'd stay in her lane and ask about coffee preferences. What he was actually getting was me. And I'd been preparing for this my entire life. The game was just beginning. Moving day arrived with the efficiency I'd come to expect from anything involving Massimo Lucchese. Professional movers handled my meager belongings with the same care they'd probably give priceless art, which was almost comical considering most of my furniture came from second-hand stores. Is this everything, Miss Bianchi? The head mover looked almost concerned, staring at the 3 boxes and 2 suitcases that represented my entire life. That's everything, I confirmed cheerfully. I believe in traveling light. What I didn't mention was that I'd deliberately left most things behind. Fresh start, clean slate, and no sentimental attachments that could be used against me. In this world, everything was a potential weapon. The estate was quieter than during my first visit. I arrived mid-morning, when Massimo would be in his office handling what Rosa had delicately referred to as business matters. Code for the kind of work that required soundproof rooms and men with very specific skill sets. Miss Bianchi, welcome. Rosa appeared in the foyer, her severe expression softening slightly. Your rooms are prepared. Would you like help unpacking? No, thank you. I prefer to do it myself. I smiled warmly. But I would love a tour of the kitchen later, if that's not too much trouble. I enjoy cooking. Rosa's eyebrows rose. Cooking? We have a full kitchen staff, Miss Bianchi. There's no need for you to... Oh, I know. I just find it relaxing. A hobby, really. I waved my hand dismissively. My mother taught me before she passed. It helps me think. Something in Rosa's expression shifted. My condolences. I lost my mother young as well. And just like that, I'd found common ground. People always underestimated the power of shared grief. Perhaps tomorrow morning? Rosa suggested. The kitchen is quieter then. I could show you where everything is kept. That would be wonderful. Thank you, Rosa. I spent the afternoon unpacking, which took approximately 30 minutes, then exploring the estate more thoroughly. The place was enormous. 3 floors, not counting the basement level that I suspected housed more than just wine storage. Security cameras monitored every hallway, every entrance. But I noticed gaps, blind spots, the kind of oversights that happen when you've been untouchable for so long you forget to stay vigilant. Interesting. At precisely 8 o'clock, there was a knock at my door. Dinner is served, Miss Bianchi, a young staff member informed me. Mr. Lucchese requests your presence in the main dining room. So we were dining together. I'd wondered if he'd avoid me entirely until the wedding. I'd changed into a simple navy dress, elegant but not trying too hard. My hair was loose, makeup minimal. The goal was to look like I'd made an effort without appearing to care too much about impressing him. The main dining room could have seated 20 people comfortably. Instead, there were 2 place settings at opposite ends of an absurdly long table. Massimo was already seated, scrolling through his phone, barely glancing up as I entered. Serena, a greeting that sounded more like an acknowledgement of my existence. Good evening. I took my seat, noting the distance between us was roughly 12 feet. Subtle. A server appeared immediately, pouring wine and presenting the first course. Everything moved with choreographed precision. We ate in silence for several minutes. I focused on my food, appearing comfortable with the quiet, while actually observing everything. The way Massimo held his fork, the European way, never switching hands. The way his jaw tightened when his phone buzzed with a message he didn't like. The way he drank his wine, 3 small sips, never finishing the glass. "Rosa tells me you want to learn the kitchen," he said finally, not looking up from his plate. "Just as a hobby. I hope that's acceptable." "Why would I care if you want to cook?" I smiled softly. Some men prefer their wives to maintain certain boundaries with the staff. I didn't want to overstep. He finally looked at me, those dark eyes assessing. "You can do whatever you want with your time, Serena, as long as it doesn't interfere with your duties." "And what exactly are my duties?" "Attending family functions, hosting when necessary, managing the household." "Managing? Rosa mentioned she reports to you." "She'll report to you now, for domestic matters." He said it like it was an inconvenience he was delegating. "I don't have time to approve menu selections and staff schedules." "Of course, I'll handle it." I took a delicate sip of wine. "Will there be many family functions?" "Enough. My uncle hosts a dinner every Sunday. Various cousins have events throughout the month. You'll need to be presentable and pleasant." "I can manage presentable and pleasant." His lips twitched, almost like he wanted to smile but had forgotten how. "We'll see." The second course arrived. Risotto with truffles that probably cost more than my monthly rent used to. I took a bite, letting the flavors settle before speaking. "This is delicious, but the truffle is slightly overwhelming the saffron," I observed casually. A lighter hand with the shaving would let both flavors shine. Massimo's fork paused halfway to his mouth. "You can taste the saffron." "Of course. It's subtle, but it's there. The earthiness of the truffle is beautiful, but saffron has such a delicate floral note. Shame to drown it out." I took another bite. "Still excellent, though. Your chef is very talented." He was staring at me now, really looking at me for the first time since I'd arrived. "You know about cooking." "I told you. My mother taught me. She was particular about flavors, about balance. She believed good cooking was like good strategy, knowing when to be bold and when to hold back. Your mother sounds like she was an interesting woman." She was. I met his eyes. "She also taught me that the most dangerous people are the ones everyone underestimates." Something flickered in his gaze. Interest, maybe, or warning. "Is that so?" "Mm-hmm." "She said a smart woman learns to look harmless while being anything but." "And are you a smart woman, Serena?" I smiled, the picture of innocence. "I'm smart enough to know when to stop talking and finish this beautiful risotto before it gets cold." He almost laughed. I saw it in the corner of his mouth, the brief flash of surprise before his control snapped back into place. The rest of dinner passed with lighter conversation. I asked about the estate's history. Let him talk about his grandfather who'd built this empire from nothing, nodded in all the right places. But I also watched, learned, catalogued every detail. When dessert was cleared, Massimo stood. "I have work to finish. You're free to explore the estate. Just avoid the East Wing basement level." "Of course. Good night, Massimo." He paused at the door, looking back. The risotto comment. That was observant. "Thank you." Don't make a habit of critiquing the chef's work. Giuseppe has a temper. Noted. Though I'd love to meet him sometime. Compare techniques. Massimo shook his head slightly, like I was already proving to be more complicated than he'd bargained for, then left. I waited until his footsteps faded before allowing myself a satisfied smile. The next morning, I woke at 6 and headed to the kitchen as Rosa had suggested. The space was enormous, professional-grade everything, enough equipment to run a restaurant. And there, Shouting in rapid Italian at a young sous chef was Giuseppe. He was exactly what I expected. Mid-50s, balding, with the passionate intensity of a man who took his craft very seriously. Idiota. The basil must be torn, not cut. You're bruising it. Good morning, I called cheerfully in Italian. Giuseppe spun around, his tirade dying on his lips. Who are you? Serena Bianchi, the future Mrs. Lucchese. Rosa said I could observe this morning if I didn't get in the way. His expression cycled through surprise, suspicion, and then grudging respect when I'd addressed him in his native tongue. You speak Italian. My mother insisted. She was from Napoli. Napolitana. His face brightened. Then she taught you proper Italian, not this northern dialect nonsense. He shot a glare at the sous chef, who wisely kept his head down. She taught me to cook too. Last night's risotto was spectacular, by the way, though I thought the truffle slightly overpowered the saffron. The kitchen went silent. The sous chef looked horrified. Rosa, who'd been reviewing inventory in the corner, froze. Giuseppe stared at me for a long moment, his face unreadable. Then he laughed, a big booming sound that echoed off the stainless steel surfaces. Ha! You have a palate. Finally, someone in this house who understands food isn't just fuel. He grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the stove. Come, come. You want to learn? I'll show you how we do things here. And just like that, I'd won over the chef. Over the next few days, I established a routine. Mornings in the kitchen with Giuseppe, who turned out to be a wealth of information about the household and its inhabitants. Afternoons reviewing household accounts with Rosa, who was slowly warming to having someone actually interested in the work. Evenings dining with Massimo, where I perfected the art of appearing harmless while dropping tiny observations that I could tell unsettled him. The orchids in the front hall are dying, I mentioned one night. They're being overwatered. Orchids need to dry out between waterings. How do you know that? I read and observe. The roots are visible through the pot. They're brown and mushy instead of silvery green. Massimo made a note on his phone. The next day, the orchids were gone, replaced with healthy specimens. I noticed Antonio Russo's wife was wearing a different perfume at the gathering yesterday, I said another evening. She always wears Chanel No. 5, but yesterday it was something floral. Jasmine-based, maybe. Why would that matter? It probably doesn't. I just notice details, although changing a signature scent is sometimes a sign of change in general. New perfume, new lover, new secrets. I shrugged delicately. Or maybe she just felt like trying something different. But I saw the way his eyes sharpened, the way he filed that information away. 2 days later, I overheard him on the phone asking pointed questions about Antonio Russo's recent activities. The wedding preparations proceeded like a military operation. I was measured for a dress I never saw until the day of, fitted for jewelry I didn't choose, briefed on a ceremony I had no input in planning. I played the compliant bride perfectly, thanking everyone profusely, expressing wonder and gratitude at every decision made on my behalf. But I also started making small changes, subtle ones. The seating chart for the reception mysteriously got revised, placing people in configurations that would force certain conversations, create certain tensions. When questioned, I blinked innocently and said I must have misunderstood Rosa's instructions. The menu Giuseppe had planned was perfect, but I suggested tiny modifications. What if we served the antipasti course family style instead of plated? It encourages conversation, creates a more intimate atmosphere. Massimo approved without really thinking about it. What I didn't mention was that family-style serving meant people reaching across each other, barriers breaking down, guard dropping. Perfect for observation. I befriended the housekeeping staff, learning everyone's names, asking about their families. Within a week, I knew that Marco's daughter was getting married in 3 months, that the head groundskeeper's son wanted to be a chef, that the night security guard was taking online classes in computer programming. Information was power, and I was collecting it like a dragon hoarding gold. "You're different from what I expected," Massimo said one evening, a week before the wedding. We'd just finished dinner, and for once, he wasn't immediately rushing off to work. "How so?" "You're present, engaged. Most women in your position would be demanding attention, throwing tantrums about the wedding plans, making everything about themselves." I smiled softly. "I'm not most women." "No," he agreed, his dark eyes studying me with an intensity that made my pulse quicken despite myself. "You're not." We stood there in the dining room, the space between us charged with something I couldn't quite name. For just a moment, I saw past the capo, past the control, to something underneath, something almost vulnerable. Then his phone rang, shattering the moment. "I need to take this." He stepped away, his voice dropping to that cold, commanding tone he used for business. "What do you mean the shipment was delayed?" I quietly left the room, but not before hearing him switch to rapid-fire Italian, discussing things that definitely weren't legal and certainly weren't my business. Yet. Back in my room, I pulled out my laptop and began typing notes. Not about Massimo's business. I was smart enough to stay away from that digital trail. But about the household, the patterns, the dynamics. I was mapping the estate like a general surveying a battlefield, learning every advantage, every weakness. Because Massimo Lucchesi thought he was getting a decorative wife who'd manage his household and stay out of his way. What he was actually getting was a partner, whether he wanted one or not. The game had moved past the opening. Now came the middle game, where the real strategy began. And I'd been training for this my entire life. The wedding day arrived with perfect weather, which felt almost insulting given the transactional nature of the event. Sunny skies and gentle breezes for a marriage built on family alliances and strategic necessity. I stood in front of the full-length mirror in my bridal suite, barely recognizing the woman staring back. The dress was exquisite. Off-white silk that hugged every curve before flowing into a subtle train, delicate lace sleeves, a neckline that was elegant without being provocative. My hair was styled in an intricate updo, with small diamonds woven throughout that caught the light like stars. I looked like every Mafia bride who'd ever walked down an aisle toward duty instead of love. "Bellissima," Rosa breathed, her stern expression softening. "You look beautiful, child." "Thank you, Rosa." I touched the diamond necklace at my throat, part of the Lucchesi family collection, heavy with history and expectation. "Are you nervous?" she asked gently. "Should I be?" "Most brides are." I turned from the mirror to face her. "I'm not most brides, Rosa, and this isn't most weddings." She studied me for a long moment, and I saw understanding in her eyes. She'd worked for this family long enough to know how these arrangements worked. "No," she agreed quietly. "It's not." The ceremony was held in the estate's private chapel, a beautiful stone building that had witnessed generations of Lucchesi marriages, baptisms, and funerals. The pews were filled with faces I'd studied over the past weeks. Capos, soldiers, their wives and children. The who's who of the organization, all dressed in their finest, watching as their boss claimed his bride. Massimo stood at the altar in a black suit that made him look like sin and power incarnate. His expression was unreadable as I walked down the aisle alone. My father was dead, and I'd refused to have some random uncle give me away like property changing hands. I walked on my own terms, a small rebellion that probably no one else noticed. When I reached the altar, Massimo's eyes met mine, and for just a second, I saw surprise flicker across his face. Good. Let him be surprised. Let him wonder what else he'd miscalculated. The ceremony was traditional, conducted in Italian by a priest who'd probably blessed more criminal enterprises than he'd care to admit. We recited vows we didn't mean, exchanged rings that symbolized ownership more than love, and sealed our fate with a kiss that was surprisingly gentle given the circumstances. "Mrs. Lucchese," Massimo murmured against my lips, so quietly only I could hear. "Mr. Lucchese," I replied, matching his tone. Something almost like amusement crossed his face before he stepped back, turning to face our audience. His hand found mine, fingers interlacing possessively. To everyone watching, we were the picture of marital unity. If only they knew. The reception was exactly what I'd expected. Excessive food, expensive wine, and enough barely concealed weapons to start a small war. I played my part perfectly, smiling at the right people, laughing at terrible jokes, accepting congratulations with gracious warmth. But I also watched, and listened, and learned. "Your wife is lovely, Massimo," Antonio Russo said, approaching our table with his wife Bianca, the same Bianca who'd changed her perfume. "You've done well for yourself." "Thank you, Antonio." Massimo's hand rested on my lower back, a possessive gesture that looked affectionate to outsiders. "Bianca, you look radiant," I said warmly. "That's a beautiful dress. And your perfume. Jasmine, isn't it? I love jasmine." She blinked, surprised I'd noticed. "Yes, it's new. A friend recommended it." "Well, your friend has excellent taste." I smiled innocently. "You should thank them." Something flickered in her eyes. Guilt, maybe, or fear. She glanced at her husband, who was too busy talking business with Massimo to notice. But I noticed, and I filed it away. Throughout the evening, I collected information like a particularly well-dressed spy. I learned that Marco's daughter's wedding was being sabotaged by her future mother-in-law, that Giuseppe's sous chef was stealing from the kitchen accounts, that 2 of the junior soldiers were having an affair, which wouldn't matter except one of them was married to a capo's niece. All of it swirled in my mind, a puzzle I was slowly assembling. "You're quiet," Massimo observed during a brief moment when we were alone at our table. "Just observing. It's an important night. I want to remember everything." "What have you observed?" I tilted my head, considering how much to reveal. "That your family is complicated. That everyone here is playing a role. That you're very good at reading people, but you mostly focus on the men." His eyebrows rose slightly. And the women hold just as much power. They're just better at hiding it. Bianca Russo, for instance. She's having an affair with someone in your organization, someone who can afford to buy her expensive perfume and has convinced her to change her signature scent to cover the evidence. Massimo went very still. "How do you know that?" "She's wearing Hermès Jardin sur le Nil. It retails for about $300. Antonio is wealthy, but he's also notoriously cheap about personal luxuries. He'd never spend that much on perfume when she's been perfectly happy with Chanel for years. Also, she's wearing it too heavily, like she's trying to mask another scent underneath. And when I mentioned thanking her friend, she looked guilty and scared. That could be innocent." "Could be," I agreed. "But notice how she keeps glancing at Luca Ferretti, and how Luca keeps finding excuses to walk past our table, even though he has no business reason to be in this section." Massimo's gaze swept the room, landing on Luca, one of his mid-level soldiers. "Interesting." "I could be wrong," I added sweetly. "I'm just a housewife now. What do I know about these things?" He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw the exact moment he realized he'd been played, that the sweet, compliant bride wasn't quite what she'd seemed. "Serena," he said slowly, "what exactly did your father teach you?" "Everything." I took a sip of champagne. "He said if I was going to marry into this life, I needed to understand it. So he taught me to observe, to analyze, to see patterns. He said the Lucchese family would either respect me or underestimate me, and I got to choose which. And you chose to be underestimated. Initially. It's amazing what people say when they think you're not paying attention. Massimo was silent for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed. A real laugh, not the polite chuckle he'd given to various guests. You've been playing me. Not playing. Strategizing. There's a difference. Is there? Of course. Playing implies deception for its own sake. Strategy is about achieving objectives. I met his eyes. And my objective, Massimo, is to be an asset to you, not a liability, whether you wanted that or not. An asset. He tested the word. That's an interesting way to describe a wife. I prefer it to decoration, or obligation. He studied me with those dark, intense eyes, and I felt something shift between us. The dynamic we'd established over the past weeks was crumbling, being rebuilt into something neither of us had anticipated. Dance with me, he said suddenly, standing and offering his hand. It wasn't a request, but it wasn't quite a command either. Something in between. I took his hand, letting him lead me to the dance floor. The band shifted into a slow waltz, and Massimo pulled me close, his hand settling at my waist with practiced ease. You're full of surprises, Mrs. Lucchese, he murmured as we moved together. Is that a problem? I haven't decided yet. His thumb traced a small circle on my waist, a gesture that was probably unconscious, but sent awareness sparking up my spine. I don't like surprises in my professional life. Good thing I'm your personal life, then. His lips twitched. Are you always this difficult? Only when I'm trying to prove a point. And what point is that? I looked up at him, letting him see past the sweet bride act to the woman underneath. That you didn't marry a decoration or an obligation. You married a partner, and the sooner you accept that, the easier both our lives will be. A partner, he repeated, something unreadable in his expression. Partners require trust. They do. And you think I should trust you, after you've admitted to manipulating me for weeks? I think you should trust that my objectives align with yours. A strong household, a stable organization, a unified front to the outside world. I paused. And I think I've already proven I can deliver on that. He considered this as we turned across the floor. The seating chart at the reception. That wasn't an accident, was it? No. You deliberately sat certain people together. I did. Why? Because Alessandro Moretti hasn't spoken to his brother Franco in 6 months, and their feud is creating tension in your West Side operations. But they'll sit together tonight because they're both too proud to make a scene at your wedding. They'll talk, they'll drink, and by the end of the night, they'll remember their family first. Massimo's hand tightened on my waist. And the Rossetti table? Carlo Rossetti's been skimming money from the dock operations. I seated him next to Tommaso Greco, who's honest to a fault, and will notice if Carlo starts spending beyond his means. Also, Tommaso's chatty when he drinks. And he will drink because I made sure Giuseppe served his favorite wine. You did all that without asking me. Would you have said yes if I'd asked? Probably not. Well then, I smiled. Good thing I didn't ask. He shook his head, but I caught the ghost of a smile on his lips. You're going to be trouble, aren't you? Probably, I admitted. But useful trouble, the best kind. The song ended, but Massimo didn't immediately release me. We stood there on the dance floor, other couples swirling around us, locked in a moment of understanding. All right, Serena, he said finally. Let's see what you can do. But know this, if you're going to be involved in my world, there are rules, boundaries, things you don't touch. Of course, I'm not interested in your business operations, Massimo. That's yours. But the household, the family dynamics, the social structure, that's mine now. and I'm very good at what I do. We'll see. He released me, stepping back. Time will tell if you're as useful as you claim. It will, I agreed. And Massimo? About Luca Ferretti and Bianca Russo? What about them? Handle it quietly. Antonio's proud. If you humiliate him publicly, you'll make an enemy. But if you let him discover it himself, control the narrative, he'll deal with it internally, and owe you a favor for the discretion. Massimo's eyes narrowed. You've thought this through. I think everything through. That's what makes me useful. He nodded slowly, a glimmer of respect in his dark eyes. Welcome to the family, Mrs. Lucchese. Something tells me life just got a lot more interesting. That's the idea, Mr. Lucchese. I smiled sweetly. That's exactly the idea. As we returned to our table, I caught Rosa watching us with a knowing expression. She raised her champagne glass slightly in my direction, a silent toast from one strategist to another. The game had shifted. The pieces were in motion. And Massimo Lucchese was finally starting to realize he hadn't married a pawn. He'd married a queen. The first month of marriage was a delicate dance of power and partnership. Massimo would leave for business at odd hours, returning with tension in his shoulders and blood on his knuckles that he thought I didn't notice. I would manage the household with ruthless efficiency, solving problems before they reached his desk, and cultivating loyalty among the staff. We circled each other like chess players, each move calculated, each word measured. But something was shifting. Your coffee, Mr. Lucchese. I set the cup on his desk one morning, exactly as he preferred it. Black, no sugar, the expensive beans Giuseppe sourced from a small roaster in Naples. Massimo looked up from his laptop, surprise flickering across his face. You brought me coffee. You've been in here since 5 a.m. I assumed you could use it. I turned to leave. Serena. I paused at the door. Thank you. Such a small thing, those 2 words, but from a man who gave orders instead of gratitude, they felt monumental. You're welcome. I allowed myself a small smile. Oh, and Marco's daughter's wedding is in 2 weeks. I had Rosa send an appropriate gift on our behalf. Baccarat crystal. Very traditional. The card says it's from both of us. I didn't know about the wedding. I know, that's why I handled it. I met his gaze. Marco mentioned it 3 times in conversations with you, but you were distracted. He'll appreciate that we remembered, even if you didn't. Massimo leaned back in his chair, studying me. You pay attention to everything, don't you? Everything that matters. I shrugged. Loyalty is built on small gestures as much as large ones. Marco would take a bullet for you, Massimo. The least we can do is acknowledge his daughter's wedding. We, he repeated softly. We. I confirmed. That was the deal, wasn't it? Partners. Over the following weeks, I proved my worth in ways Massimo couldn't ignore. When a supplier tried to shortchange a shipment, I noticed the discrepancy in the inventory before Giuseppe even realized something was wrong. When 2 of the security guards got into a dispute that could have turned violent, I diffused it by discovering one was sleeping with the other's ex-girlfriend and quietly reassigning their shifts. And when Massimo's uncle hosted one of his infamous Sunday dinners, I navigated the family politics with the skill of a seasoned diplomat. Serena, Cara, you must try my osso buco, Uncle Vittorio boomed, piling food onto my plate despite my protests. At 73, he was the family patriarch, the man who'd built this empire before passing the reins to Massimo's father, then to Massimo himself. It looks wonderful, Uncle Vittorio. Though I have to say, Giuseppe's version last week had a slightly brighter flavor. I think he uses orange zest in addition to lemon. Vittorio's eyes narrowed. You're critiquing my cooking? The table went silent. Massimo's hand tightened on his wine glass. I smiled serenely. Not at all. I'm simply noting the difference. Yours is more traditional, which has its own beauty. the depth of flavor from that long, slow braise. You can taste the patience in every bite. Giuseppe's is more modern, brighter. Both are excellent, just different philosophies. Vittorio stared at me for a long moment. Then he laughed, slapping the table. She has a tongue on her, this one. Massimo, you've finally found a woman with some fire. About time. Across the table, Massimo's cousin Dante raised his glass. To Serena, who's brave enough to tell Uncle Vittorio his cooking isn't perfect. I didn't say it wasn't perfect, I corrected gently. I said it was traditional. There's a difference. There she goes again! Vittorio roared with delight. I like her, Massimo. Keep this one. Later, in the car ride home, Massimo was quiet. Did I overstep? I asked finally. No. He glanced at me. You did exactly what needed to be done. Vittorio respects people who stand their ground. If you'd fawned over his cooking, he would have dismissed you as another vapid wife trying to earn favor. I wasn't trying to earn anything. His osso buco really is more traditional than Giuseppe's. I know. That's what made it perfect. He paused. You're good at this. At what? Reading people. Knowing exactly what to say to get the reaction you want. I turned to look at him fully. Is that what you think I'm doing? Manipulating everyone? Aren't you? No, Massimo. I'm being honest within a strategic framework. There's a difference. I settled back against the leather seat. Your uncle's osso buco is traditional because he learned to cook from his mother in Sicily 80 years ago. Giuseppe's is modern because he trained in Milan under chefs who believe in innovation. Both approaches have merit. I simply acknowledged that truth in a way that respected Vittorio while also demonstrating I have a palate and opinions of my own. Most people would have just complimented him and moved on. I'm not most people. You know that by now. He was quiet again, but I caught the slight curve of his lips. No, he agreed. You're definitely not. That night, Massimo didn't disappear into his office after dinner. Instead, he poured 2 glasses of whiskey and gestured for me to join him in the library. Tell me about your father, he said once we were settled in the leather chairs by the fireplace. The question surprised me. We'd been married 5 weeks, and he'd never asked about my family beyond the basic facts necessary for the alliance. What do you want to know? Everything. How did he prepare you for this life? I swirled the whiskey in my glass, watching the amber liquid catch the firelight. He was honest about what it was. No fairy tales, no pretending our world was something it wasn't. He taught me to observe before speaking, to think 3 moves ahead, to understand that power isn't just about force, it's about information and influence. He sounds like he was a smart man. He was, until he wasn't. I took a sip, the whiskey burning pleasantly down my throat. He got sloppy, started trusting the wrong people, made decisions based on ego instead of strategy. That's what got him killed. Massimo leaned forward slightly. You think he could have prevented it? I know he could have. Tommaso Savarino had been skimming for months. Everyone knew it except my father, who refused to believe his oldest friend would betray him. I met Massimo's eyes. Loyalty is important, but blind loyalty is dangerous. My father forgot that. And you won't make the same mistake. No, I agreed. I won't. I'll be loyal to you, Massimo, to our family, our household, our position, but I'll never be blind to threats, even from people we trust. He studied me over the rim of his glass. You really see this as a partnership, don't you? I'm starting to. He set his glass down. I have to travel next month. Thailand. Business that requires my personal attention. My stomach tightened, though I kept my expression neutral. Thailand meant the kind of business that required personal attention, usually involved violence, danger, and things that could go very wrong very quickly. How long will you be gone? A week, maybe 2. He paused. Will you be all right managing things here? Of course. Rosa and I have everything running smoothly. Giuseppe will complain that you're missing his special preparations, but he'll survive. I kept my tone light. Though I have to ask, is this dangerous? It's business. That's not an answer, Massimo. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something shift in his expression. Yes, he said finally. It could be dangerous. But I'll have Marco and 6 of our best men with me. We'll be careful. Good. I stood, setting my glass down. Because you promised to keep me as your wife, and I'm holding you to that. It would be terribly inconvenient to be widowed after only 6 weeks of marriage. Inconvenient, he repeated, something almost like amusement in his voice. Extremely. I've just gotten the household running the way I want it. Starting over with a new husband would be exhausting. This time he did smile, a real smile that transformed his face from coldly handsome to devastatingly attractive. I'll try not to inconvenience you with my death then. I'd appreciate that. I headed toward the door, then paused. Massimo? Yes. Come back safe. Not because it would be inconvenient if you didn't, but because... I hesitated, surprised by my own honesty. Because I'm just starting to like being married to you. The vulnerability in that admission hung between us. I'd revealed more than I'd intended, shown a crack in my own carefully constructed armor. Massimo stood, crossing to where I stood by the door. He was close enough that I could smell his cologne, see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. I'm starting to like being married to you too, Serena. His hand came up, fingers brushing my cheek with unexpected gentleness. Which is not something I ever expected to say. We're full of surprises for each other, apparently. Apparently. His thumb traced along my jawline. When I get back from Thailand, maybe we should discuss what this marriage actually is, what it's becoming. I'd like that. He leaned down, and for one breathless moment I thought he might kiss me. But instead, he pressed his lips to my forehead, a gesture somehow more intimate than a kiss. Sleep well, wife. You too, husband. I left the library with my heart racing and my carefully maintained control slipping. This wasn't supposed to happen. I wasn't supposed to actually care about Massimo Lucchesi beyond the strategic advantages our marriage provided. But somewhere between the coffee deliveries and the osso buco discussions and the whiskey-fueled honesty, something had shifted. I was starting to fall for my own husband. And that, I realized as I climbed into my solitary bed, was far more dangerous than any business trip to Thailand could ever be. Massimo left for Thailand on a Tuesday morning, kissing my forehead in a gesture that had become routine over the past 2 weeks. Casual intimacy that neither of us acknowledged, but both of us seemed to need. 2 weeks maximum, he promised. Marco will check in daily. I'll keep everything running smoothly. I adjusted his tie, a wifely gesture that felt less performative than it once had. Try not to get shot. I'll add it to my agenda. He caught my hand, bringing it to his lips. Be safe, Serena. I'm staying in a fortress with armed guards. You're the one flying into whatever mess requires the boss's personal attention. Fair point. He released my hand reluctantly. If anything happens, I'll call Marco. I know the protocol. I smiled. Go. Handle your business. Come home. Home. The word had slipped out naturally, and I saw something flicker in his eyes before he nodded and left. The first week passed smoothly. I managed the household, attended a charity luncheon with the wives, and successfully mediated a dispute between Giuseppe and the new pastry chef. Marco called daily with updates. Everything on schedule, no complications. Massimo sent his regards. The second week started the same way. Then on day 9, Marco's call didn't come. I waited until noon, telling myself there was a reasonable explanation. Time zones, Meetings running long, poor cell reception in whatever remote location they were operating from. By evening, I was pacing the library, phone in hand. At midnight, I called Marco's number. It went straight to voicemail. "Rosa," I called, my voice steady despite the fear coiling in my stomach. "I need you to contact Luca Ferretti. Tell him to come to the house immediately." Rosa appeared in the doorway, concern etched on her face. "Mrs. Lucchese, is everything all right?" "I don't know yet. That's what we're going to find out." Luca arrived within an hour, still adjusting his jacket, clearly pulled from sleep or something more interesting. "Mrs. Lucchese, you wanted to see me?" "When did you last hear from Marco?" He hesitated. "Yesterday morning. He checked in as scheduled, said everything was proceeding as planned. And today?" "Nothing. But that's not unusual when they're in deep cover." "It is unusual for Marco," I interrupted. "He's never missed a check-in. Not in the 15 years he's worked for this family." I fixed Luca with a stare I'd learned from watching Massimo. "I want you to activate every contact we have in Thailand. Find out where my husband is, and why his second-in-command hasn't reported in over 24 hours. "Mrs. Lucchese, with all respect, that's not really something. That's not a request, Luca. That's an order." I kept my voice level. "Massimo left me in charge of this household and everyone in it. Right now, I'm choosing to interpret household very broadly. So unless you want to explain to him why you ignored his wife's direct order when he was potentially in danger, I suggest you make those calls." Luca stared at me for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Yes, ma'am. I'll start immediately." The next 36 hours were hell. I maintained a calm exterior, managing daily operations as if nothing was wrong, but internally I was calculating worst-case scenarios and survival strategies. If Massimo was dead, the family would fracture. Uncle Vittorio would probably try to seize control. The alliances Massimo had built would collapse, and I would be a widow before I'd even figured out what I felt for my husband. I was in the library reviewing Giuseppe's grocery orders, maintaining normalcy through sheer force of will, when I heard the commotion. Shouting, running footsteps. Then Rosa burst through the door, her usually composed face pale. "Mrs. Lucchese, they're back. Mr. Lucchese is—" She stopped, searching for words. "You should come. Now." I ran through the house, propriety forgotten, and found chaos in the main foyer. Massimo was there, Marco and 2 other men supporting him, all of them covered in blood and dirt and looking like they'd fought their way through hell. But that wasn't what made me stop in my tracks. In Massimo's arms, wrapped in his jacket despite the blood soaking through it, was a child. A little girl, maybe 5 or 6 years old, with enormous dark eyes that took in everything, with the focused intensity of someone much older. She wasn't crying, wasn't clinging to Massimo in fear. She was observing, calculating, processing the scene with eerie calm. "Medical room now," I ordered, my training kicking in over my shock. "Rosa, call Dr. Caruso. Tell him we have multiple injuries and to bring his full kit. Giuseppe, prepare food, soup, bread, something gentle. Luca, secure the perimeter and make sure we weren't followed." Everyone moved at once, responding to the authority in my voice. I turned to Massimo. "Can you walk?" "Yes." His voice was rough, exhausted. "Most of this blood isn't mine." Comforting. I looked at the child in his arms. "Hello, sweetheart. What's your name?" She studied me with those intense eyes, then looked up at Massimo as if asking permission. "It's all right," he said gently. "This is Serena, my wife. You can trust her." The child looked back at me, seeming to weigh his words against her own assessment. Finally she spoke, her voice soft but clear. "Lily. My name is Lily." "Hello, Lily. You're safe now." I gestured toward the medical room. "Let's get everyone cleaned up, and then we'll figure everything out. Massimo followed me, still carrying Lily, who hadn't made any move to be put down. The medical room, really more of a small emergency clinic, was already prepared when we arrived. Dr. Caruso rushed in moments later, his eyes widening at the scene. "Start with them," I said, pointing to Marco and the other men, who had injuries that were clearly worse than Massimo's. "I'll handle my husband." Dr. Caruso nodded, knowing better than to argue with Mrs. Lucchese when she used that tone. I turned to Massimo. "Put Lily down so I can see where you're hurt." "I'm fine." "You're covered in blood and you're favoring your left side." "Put the child down." "She doesn't like to be put down." He said it matter-of-factly. "Not since—" He stopped, glancing at Lily. I looked at the little girl, seeing past the calm exterior to the fear underneath, the trauma of whatever she'd witnessed. "Lily, would it be okay if Massimo sat down with you while I check if he's hurt? You can stay right in his lap." She considered this, then nodded once. Massimo sank into a chair, and I carefully cut away his ruined shirt, cataloging injuries. Bruised ribs, a gash on his shoulder that would need stitches, various cuts and abrasions. But nothing life-threatening. "You'll live," I said, starting to clean the wounds. That was the plan. He winced as I disinfected a particularly deep cut. "What happened?" "Long story. I have time." I kept my hand steady, my voice calm, aware that Lily was listening to every word. Massimo looked down at the child in his arms, something tender in his expression that I'd never seen before. "We'll talk later. When—" He glanced meaningfully at Lily. I understood. Whatever had happened, it wasn't appropriate for a child's ears. "All right." I finished bandaging his shoulder. "But we will talk. Extensively. I wouldn't expect anything less." Lily suddenly spoke, her voice cutting through the tension. "You're very bossy." I blinked, surprised. "Excuse me?" "You." Those dark eyes fixed on me. "You tell everyone what to do, like the chief." "The chief?" I glanced at Massimo, who was trying very hard not to smile. "That's what she calls me," he explained. "She says I act like a chief giving orders." "Well, she's not wrong." I crouched down to Lily's eye level. "Yes, I am bossy. Is that a problem?" Lily studied me seriously. "No, it's good. Someone needs to be bossy when the chief is bleeding." Despite everything, the blood, the fear, the chaos, I laughed. "You're absolutely right. Someone does. Are you always this bossy, or just when people are bleeding?" "Mostly always. It's one of my special talents." "What are your other talents?" "Well, I can cook. I speak 3 languages. I'm very good at noticing things other people miss, and I can tell when someone is lying." Lily's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "Are you lying now?" "No." "How do I know?" "Because lying would be inefficient. The truth is much more useful." I smiled. "And I think you already knew I wasn't lying. You just wanted to see if I'd admit to being able to tell." For the first time, something that might have been a smile crossed Lily's face. "You're smart." "Thank you. So are you." "I know." She said it without arrogance, just stating a fact. I looked up at Massimo, who was watching our exchange with barely concealed amusement. "Where did you find this brilliant child?" "I'll explain everything, I promise." His hand gently stroked Lily's hair. "But right now, everyone needs food, rest, and clean clothes, in that order." "Agreed." I stood. "Giuseppe should have food ready. Rosa can prepare a room for Lily." "No." Lily's voice was sharp, her small hand clutching Massimo's shirt. "I stay with the chief." "Lily," Massimo started gently. "I stay with the chief." Each word was deliberate, final. "Or I don't stay at all." I saw the trauma underneath the bravado, the terror of being separated from the one person she'd designated as safe. "Of course you can stay with him," I said smoothly. "We'll set up the guest room next to our suite. That way you're close, but you have your own space. Would that be acceptable?" Lily looked between us, considering. "You sleep next to his room?" "Well, my room connects to his room. We're married, so we share a suite." "But you don't share a bed," Lily observed with that unsettling perception. I saw. "You each have your own rooms inside the big rooms." Massimo's eyebrows rose. "You're very observant." "I watch things. It keeps me safe." She looked at me. "Why don't you sleep in the same bed if you're married?" I glanced at Massimo, who looked equally caught off guard by the directness of the question. "That's complicated," I said finally. "Grown-up complicated or actually complicated?" "Both," Massimo and I said simultaneously. Lily nodded sagely. "That means you like each other, but you're being stupid about it." I couldn't help it. I laughed, a real laugh that echoed through the medical room. "You know what, Lily? I think you might be right. I'm usually right." She settled more comfortably against Massimo. "Can we eat now? I'm hungry." "Yes," I agreed. "Let's eat, and then we'll figure out everything else." As we moved toward the dining room, Massimo still carrying Lily, Marco and the others following behind after Dr. Caruso cleared them, I caught Massimo's eye. We had a lot to discuss. What happened in Thailand, why he'd returned with a child, what the blood and the panic and the desperate fight home had all been about. But right now, in this moment, we had something more important. We had this brilliant, observant little girl who'd somehow decided we were safe, who'd looked at our complicated marriage and our careful distance and called us out on it with the brutal honesty only children possess. And I realized, watching Massimo gently adjust Lily's position so she could see where we were going, that everything had just changed. This wasn't just about us anymore. Whatever this family was becoming, Lily was part of it now, and I was absolutely certain our lives would never be boring again. Giuseppe outdid himself. Within an hour, the dining table held enough food to feed an army. Minestrone soup, fresh bread still warm from the oven, roasted chicken, pasta with simple butter and sage. Comfort food, designed to soothe and restore. Lily ate with methodical precision, trying small bites of everything, and cataloging each flavor with the same intense focus she applied to everything else. "This soup is good," she announced. "Better than the soup at the place before." "What place before?" I asked gently. She glanced at Massimo, who nodded slightly. "The house where the bad men kept me. Their soup was watery. This has actual vegetables." The casual way she said it made my chest tight. I forced my expression to remain calm. "Well, Giuseppe will be pleased to know his soup meets your standards. He's very particular about his cooking." "Is he bossy too?" "Extremely. You'll like him." Across the table, Marco was giving Massimo a look that clearly meant, "We need to talk." But Massimo was focused on making sure Lily ate, cutting her chicken into smaller pieces, making sure she had enough bread. "So," I said, addressing the table at large, "who wants to explain what happened in Thailand before I lose my mind from curiosity?" Marco opened his mouth, but Lily beat him to it. "The chief rescued me from human traffickers who were going to sell me. There was shooting and explosions, and the chief carried me through a burning building. Then we had to hide in a shipping container for 2 days before we could get to the airport. Marco got stabbed, but he's fine. And one of the bad men followed us, but the chief killed him at the airport in Singapore." She took another spoonful of soup. "This bread is very good. Can I have more?" The table fell silent. I slowly turned to look at Massimo, who had the grace to look slightly sheepish. "That's mostly accurate," he admitted, though simplified. "Simplified," I repeated flatly. "She just described a rescue mission, explosions, murder, and international flight while hiding in cargo. And you're saying that's the simplified version?" The full version has more explosions, Lily offered helpfully. I pressed my fingers to my temples, feeling a headache forming. Of course it does. Why wouldn't it? In my defense, Massimo said, I didn't plan to come home with a child. The trafficking ring was supposed to be a simple business matter. They were moving goods through our territory without permission. We went to shut them down. And found children being held for sale, Marco finished grimly. 18 kids, ages 4 to 12. We called in local authorities we trust, got most of them to safety. But not Lily, I guessed. Lily is complicated, Massimo said carefully. I have a photographic memory, Lily explained, as if discussing the weather. I saw things, names, faces, documents. The bad men said I knew too much. They were going to kill me instead of selling me. So we took her with us, Massimo said, because leaving her there wasn't an option. I looked at this tiny, brilliant girl who'd survived horrors I couldn't imagine, and felt something fierce bloom in my chest. Of course it wasn't. The problem, Marco interjected, is that the trafficking ring had connections to the Volkov organization, and they're very unhappy about our interference. How unhappy? They sent a kill team to the airport unhappy. We dealt with them, but it's not over. The Volkovs, I said slowly, my mind already racing through implications. Russian Mafia, primarily operating in Eastern Europe and Asia. They've been trying to expand into our territory for years. Massimo's eyebrows rose. You know about the Volkovs? I read your intelligence briefings. The ones you leave on your desk that I'm apparently not supposed to see but definitely do. I smiled sweetly. How unhappy are we talking? Retribution unhappy or war unhappy? Somewhere in between, Marco admitted. They can't afford full war, but they'll want to send a message. Perfect. I stood, my mind shifting into strategic mode. Luca, I want security tripled. Not just here, every property, every business. Marco, compile a list of known Volkov associates in our territory. If they're planning something, they'll need local support. Serena, Massimo started. And someone needs to contact Uncle Vittorio. He has connections with the Bratva leadership. If we can get them to pressure the Volkovs to back down, we avoid unnecessary bloodshed. The Bratva won't interfere in Volkov business without incentive, I know, which is why we'll offer them the information Lily has. I looked at the little girl. You said you have a photographic memory. You saw documents? Lily nodded. Shipping manifests, bank accounts, names of people who bought from the bad men. That's valuable intelligence. The Bratva has been trying to eliminate the Volkov's human trafficking operations for years. It's bad for their reputation. If we give them the tools to do it, they'll consider it a favor, which means they'll tell the Volkovs to back off or lose Bratva protection. The table stared at me. What? I looked around. Did I miss something? No, Massimo said slowly, something like wonder in his voice. You just outlined a perfect strategy in under 2 minutes. Oh, please. It's basic diplomatic negotiation. Give people what they want. Get what you need in return. I sat back down. Though we should move quickly. The Volkovs won't wait long to make their move. I agree, Massimo said. Marco, make the calls. Luca, implement Serena's security protocols. I'll contact Vittorio. Everyone stood to leave, but Lily's voice stopped them. Wait, I have a question. We all turned. If the Bratva helps us and the Volkovs back down, what happens to me? The room went quiet. It was the first time Lily had shown actual vulnerability, the first crack in her carefully maintained composure. Massimo crouched beside her chair, bringing himself to her eye level. You stay here, with us, if you want to. Why would you want me? I'm trouble. The social worker said I was difficult, and no one would want a child like me. The social worker was an idiot, I said firmly. You're not difficult. You're brilliant and observant, and you've survived things that would break most adults. Those aren't flaws, Lily. Those are strengths. But I come with people who want to kill me. We come with people who want to kill us, Massimo countered. That's just Tuesday in this family. Plus, I added, I've been the only woman in this house full of men. It's exhausting. I could use another female perspective, especially one who's not afraid to call people out on their nonsense. Lily looked between us, her dark eyes searching for deception. You're serious? You actually want me to stay? Yes, Massimo and I said simultaneously. Even though I'm bossy and I ask too many questions and I'm too smart for my own good? Especially because of those things, I said. You'll fit right in. For the first time since arriving, Lily smiled, a real smile that transformed her serious face into something luminous. Okay, I'll stay, but I have conditions. Of course you do, Massimo said, amusement clear in his voice. Let's hear them. First, I want my own room, but it has to be close to yours. Second, I get to learn how to shoot a gun when I'm older, because I'm not being helpless ever again. Third, Giuseppe has to teach me to cook. Fourth, she looked between us with those two knowing eyes. You two have to stop being stupid and actually sleep in the same bed like married people because you like each other, and it's weird that you pretend you don't. I choked on my water. Massimo's hand froze halfway to his wine glass. Lily, he said carefully. That's complicated. No, it's not. You look at her when she's not watching. She brings you coffee every morning even though you have staff who could do it. You hold hands under the table when you think no one notices, and when she thought you were dead in Thailand, she activated half your organization to find you. Lily crossed her arms. That's not complicated. That's you both being scared. The entire room was watching us now. Marco was trying very hard not to smile. Rosa had appeared in the doorway and wasn't even pretending not to listen. She makes a valid point, I said finally, looking at Massimo. She really does, he agreed. His dark eyes locked on mine. Though I'd argue we're not scared, we're just strategically cautious, he offered. Exactly. Which is stupid, Lily interjected. According to my observations, you're perfect for each other. You're both bossy, you both think too much, and you both pretend you don't have feelings when you obviously do. Lily, I started. I'm not done. Fifth condition. When you two finally figure out what everyone else already knows, I get to say, I told you so. Massimo laughed. A full, genuine laugh that I'd never heard before. Deal. All 5 conditions accepted. Wait, I protested. Shouldn't we discuss? Which part, Serena? The part where our 6-year-old daughter... 6 3/4, Lily corrected. Our 6 3/4-year-old daughter is absolutely right about everything? Or the part where we've been dancing around this for months like idiots? I wasn't going to say idiots, but you were thinking it. He stood, crossing to where I sat, and extended his hand. Dance with me. There's no music. There's always music. He pulled me to my feet, one hand at my waist, the other taking mine. And we have an audience of people who are invested in watching us finally stop being stupid. This is highly irregular, I said, but I was already moving with him, our bodies finding rhythm without any actual song. Everything about us is irregular, wife. We might as well embrace it. Around us, I could hear Marco herding people out, giving us privacy. But Lily remained, watching with satisfaction. I'm scared, I admitted quietly, just for Massimo. This wasn't supposed to be real. I know, me too. His hand tightened on my waist. But somewhere between the coffee and the Osso Buco discussions and you activating my entire organization to find me, it became real anyway. That's very inconvenient. Extremely. He smiled. But I'm finding I don't actually mind. No? No. Because you're brilliant and bossy and you see through all my careful control to the person underneath. And instead of running away, you decided to stay and be my partner. He leaned his forehead against mine. How could I not fall in love with that? My breath caught. Love? Inconveniently, completely, irrevocably in love with you, Serena Lucchese. I'm going to say I told you so now, Lily announced from her chair. We both laughed, the tension breaking. I love you too, I said, finally admitting what I'd been fighting for months. Even though you're complicated and dangerous and you bring home children from international rescue missions. Speaking of which, Massimo glanced at Lily. We should probably talk about adoption paperwork. Already drafted, I admitted. I had our lawyers prepare documents 3 hours after you arrived, just in case. You what? I'm efficient. You know this about me. He shook his head, but he was smiling. What am I going to do with you? Love me, apparently. It's very inconvenient for both of us. The best things usually are. A commotion from the hallway interrupted us. Marco burst in, phone in hand. Boss, we have a problem. The Volkovs just made their move. 6 cars approaching the estate. They'll be here in 5 minutes. The mood shifted instantly. Massimo's expression went cold and calculated. Security positions? Already deployed, but boss, they brought serious firepower. Of course they did. Massimo looked at me. Serena, take Lily to the safe room. No, Lily and I said simultaneously. Absolutely not, I continued. I'm not hiding while people attack our home. Serena, I can shoot, Massimo. My father made sure of it. And Lily... I looked at the little girl. You're going to the safe room with Rosa. Non-negotiable. But... no buts. The grown-ups will handle this. Your job is to stay safe so we have someone to come back to. Lily's eyes narrowed, but she nodded. Fine. But I want a full report after. Deal. As Rosa hurried Lily away, I turned to Massimo. I know you're about to argue that I should go with them. The thought crossed my mind. And I'm telling you that's not happening. We're partners, remember? That means we fight together. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. All right, partners. But you stay behind cover, and you follow my orders. I'll follow your tactical orders, I corrected, because you're better at combat strategy. But don't expect me to just sit there looking decorative. I wouldn't dream of it. He handed me a gun from the safe behind his desk. You know how to use this? Please. I could field strip that blindfolded. I checked the chamber, the magazine, the safety. What's the plan? We make them regret coming to our home. The next 20 minutes were chaos. The Volkovs came hard and fast, but they made a critical mistake. They assumed Massimo Lucchese would be weakened from Thailand, unprepared for immediate retaliation. They didn't account for his brilliant, strategic wife, who'd tripled security and positioned men in locations they'd never expect. They definitely didn't account for me, firing from the library window with deadly accuracy, while simultaneously coordinating reinforcements via radio. East entrance needs support, I called to Marco. On it. Massimo, 3 men coming around the south garden. He was already moving, taking them down with efficient brutality. When the smoke cleared, literally someone had thrown a flashbang, we stood in the destroyed front hall, surrounded by unconscious or fleeing Volkov soldiers. Is everyone all right? I asked, checking our people for injuries. Few scratches, nothing serious, Marco reported. Mrs. Lucchese, your shooting is impressive. My father believed in thorough education. Massimo pulled me close, despite the audience. You're incredible. I know. Is it over? For now. But we should... Already done. I held up my phone. I called Vittorio during the firefight. He's been on with Bratva leadership for the past 15 minutes. They're very interested in the intelligence Lily can provide. The Volkovs will be told to back off or lose their protection. You called my uncle during a firefight? Multitasking is one of my talents. I smiled. Also, I may have recorded the attack. Video evidence of them violating our territory gives us significant leverage in negotiations. Massimo stared at me. Then he kissed me, hard and desperate and claiming, right there in front of everyone. When we broke apart, I was breathless. "Marry me," he said. "We're already married. Marry me again. A real wedding, with family who actually matters, with vows we actually mean. That's the most ridiculous, impractical, wonderful idea you've ever had." Is that a yes? Of course it's a yes. A small voice from the hallway interrupted us. Are the bad men gone? We turned to find Lily peeking around the corner, Rosa trying unsuccessfully to hold her back. The bad men are gone, Massimo confirmed. You can come out. Lily ran to us, and we both knelt to catch her. She threw her arms around both our necks. You came back. Always, I promised. That's what family does. Even when it's dangerous and scary and they're shooting. Especially then, Massimo said. That's when family is most important. Lily pulled back, looking between us with those two knowing eyes. You kissed. Does that mean you're done being stupid? Completely done, I confirmed. Good. Can we have dinner now? All that shooting made me hungry, and I want to sit between you at the table, like a real family. Like a real family, Massimo agreed, taking her hand. His other hand found mine. Let's go see what Giuseppe can improvise from the chaos. As we walked through the destroyed foyer toward the kitchen, Lily chattering about how many bad guys she'd counted and whether she could learn to shoot when she was 7 or if she had to wait until 8, I caught Massimo's eye. He smiled, a real smile that transformed his entire face. Worth it? I asked quietly. Every second. 3 months later, we stood in the same chapel where I'd first married Massimo. But everything was different. This time, I walked down the aisle with Lily holding my hand, both of us in matching dresses that she'd insisted on. This time, the vows were real, written by us, promising partnership and love and the chaos that came with being a family. This time, when Massimo kissed me, it wasn't duty or strategy. It was home. Finally, Lily whispered loudly as we signed the marriage certificate. It only took you forever to figure out you loved each other. The whole chapel laughed. Uncle Vittorio raised his glass. To Massimo and Serena, who proved that the best marriages are built on strategy, stubbornness, and a brilliant child who's smarter than both of them. And to Lily, Massimo added, lifting his own glass, who invaded our lives and our hearts and made us a family whether we were ready or not. I'm always ready, Lily corrected. You two were the slow ones. As laughter filled the chapel and our family, messy and dangerous and unconventional, celebrated around us, I leaned into Massimo. She's going to be running the organization by the time she's 18, I murmured. Probably by 15, if we're honest. Should we be worried? Terrified. He kissed my temple, but I can't wait to see it. Neither could I, because this brilliant, observant little girl had done what I'd been trying to do for months. She'd broken through Massimo's control, shattered his walls, and reminded both of us that love wasn't a weakness. It was the most powerful strategy of all.